The first bullet had already passed through the door of the stagecoach when Penelope Owens realized that all the lies she had been telling for the past 3 years were about to cost her everything she had left. The year was 1876, and the harsh California sun beat down on the dusty road between Sacramento and Yuba City with an indifference that matched the men who had ambushed their small party. She clutched her carpetbag to her chest, feeling the weight of the false letters of recommendation and fabricated references that had gotten her this far, and wondered if honesty might have been the safer path after all. The driver shouted something incomprehensible as another shot rang out, and the horses screamed their protest. Penelope braced herself against the side of the coach, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Across from her, an elderly woman clutched a rosary and prayed in whispered Spanish, while a portly merchant had gone pale as milk. Then the coach lurched violently to one side. Penelope felt herself lifted from her seat, suspended in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, before gravity reasserted itself with brutal force. The world became a chaos of splintering wood, screaming horses, and the taste of dust and blood in her mouth. When everything finally stopped moving, she found herself lying on her back, staring up at the impossibly blue California sky through the wreckage of what had once been the roof of the stagecoach. Her ears rang with a high, piercing note that drowned out all other sounds. She tried to move and gasped at the sharp pain that lanced through her side. Not broken, she thought with the strange clarity that sometimes comes in moments of crisis, just badly bruised. She could move her fingers, her toes. Everything still worked, more or less. The ringing in her ears began to fade, replaced by voices. Rough voices, laughing. The bandits. Penelope forced herself to remain still to keep her breathing shallow and even. Through her barely open eyes, she could see two men rifling through the wreckage, pulling bags and trunks free, tossing aside anything that did not immediately promise value. "This one's dead," one of them said, and Penelope's stomach turned as she realized he was talking about the driver. She had exchanged pleasantries with that man not 2 hours ago, had learned that his name was George and that he had 3 daughters waiting for him at home. "Got a live one here," another voice called out. "Old Mexican woman, leave her. Anyone else?" Penelope held her breath as heavy footsteps approached. A shadow fell across her face. She could smell tobacco and unwashed clothes, could hear the wheeze of the man's breathing. Her hand, hidden in the folds of her dress, found a piece of splintered wood from the coach. Not much of a weapon, but it was something. "This one looks done for 2, the man said, and she felt the toe of his boot prod her ribs. It took every ounce of self-control she possessed not to cry out at the pain. Shame. She was pretty. Leave her then. We got what we came for. Let's ride before someone comes along." The footsteps retreated. Penelope waited, counting her heartbeats, not daring to move until the sound of hoofbeats had faded completely into the distance. Only then did she allow herself to draw a full, shuddering breath. "Are you hurt badly?" The voice was soft, accented, and came from somewhere behind her, the elderly woman. "I do not think so," Penelope managed, her own voice sounding strange and distant to her ears. "Are you? My shoulder is not good, but I am alive. Can you move?" Penelope tested her limbs again, then slowly, carefully, began to extract herself from the wreckage. Her traveling dress was torn and stained with dust and blood, though she could not tell if the blood was hers or someone else's. The thought made her stomach churn again. The world tilted dangerously when she finally got to her feet, but she steadied herself against what remained of the coach and surveyed the scene. The driver lay sprawled in the road, his eyes open and staring at nothing. The merchant had been thrown clear and lay at an awkward angle that suggested his neck had broken in the fall. The elderly woman was extracting herself more slowly from the other side of the wreckage, cradling her left arm against her body. "We need to get off the road," Penelope said, forcing herself to think practically. "In case they come back." "There is a ranch," the woman said, gesturing vaguely toward the east. "Maybe 2 miles. I am Maria Gonzalez. My son has land there. Penelope Owens, can you walk?" "I will walk or I will crawl, but I will not die on this road." They salvaged what they could from the wreckage. Penelope found her carpetbag, miraculously intact, and a canteen that was half full of water. Maria had a small bundle of belongings that had somehow survived the crash. Together, moving slowly and stopping often to rest, they began making their way across the dusty California landscape toward where Maria insisted her son's ranch lay. The sun climbed higher, and the heat became oppressive. Penelope's side ached with every step, and she could see that Maria was struggling, her face drawn with pain. But they kept moving, because the alternative was to sit down and wait for death or for the bandits to return, and neither option was acceptable. It was well past noon when they finally saw the ranch in the distance. It was not much to look at, just a simple wooden house and a few outbuildings with a corral that held a handful of horses. But to Penelope's eyes, it looked like salvation. They were perhaps a quarter-mile away when a figure emerged from the house. A man, tall and lean, with a rifle in his hands. He stood on the porch, watching them approach, and Penelope felt her heart sink. What if Maria had been wrong? What if this was not her son's ranch after all? But then Maria raised her good arm and called out something in Spanish, and the man lowered the rifle. He jumped off the porch and ran toward them, and Maria sagged with relief. "My son," she said to Penelope. "Diego, we are safe now." Diego Gonzalez reached them and immediately took his mother's weight, speaking rapidly in Spanish. Maria answered him in the same language, and Penelope caught enough words to understand that she was explaining what had happened. Diego's face darkened with anger, but he nodded and helped his mother start toward the house, gesturing for Penelope to follow. "You are welcome in my home," he said in accented but clear English. "Come. My mother needs rest, and so do you." The inside of the house was simple but clean, with whitewashed walls and a hard-packed earth floor. Diego settled his mother into a rocking chair and then turned to Penelope. "Please sit. I will bring water." Penelope sank into a wooden chair and allowed herself, finally, to relax. The adrenaline that had been keeping her moving drained away all at once, leaving her feeling hollowed out and shaky. When Diego returned with water and a plate of tortillas and beans, she realized she was ravenous. "Eat," he urged. "Then you can tell me what happened." Between bites, Penelope and Maria related the story of the ambush. Diego listened, his face growing darker. "This is the 3rd attack in 2 months," he said. "The same gang, I think. They are getting bolder. Someone needs to do something." "What about the law?" Penelope asked. Diego made a dismissive gesture. "The sheriff in Yuba City, he does not care much about what happens out here. We are too far from town and we are Mexican. To him, we do not matter." Penelope heard the bitterness in his voice and could not argue with it. She had seen enough in her travels to know that justice was often a matter of who you were and where you stood in the social order. "You cannot travel today," Diego continued, turning to Penelope. "You are hurt, and it is not safe. You will stay here tonight, and tomorrow I will take you into town." "I have no money," Penelope admitted. "The bandits took everything. Then you will stay as my guest. My mother is alive because of you. That is payment enough." "I did not do anything," Penelope protested. "You walked with her when you could have left her. You helped her. That is something." Penelope wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. Diego showed her to a small room with a narrow bed and told her to rest. She did not mean to fall asleep, but the moment her head touched the pillow, consciousness fled. When she woke, the light slanting through the small window was golden with evening. She could hear voices from the main room speaking in Spanish. Moving carefully, testing her injuries, she got up and went to join them. Diego and Maria were sitting at the table, along with another man. This one was Anglo, dressed in worn trail clothes and a battered hat. He had the look of someone who spent most of his time in the saddle, all lean muscle and weathered skin. His hair was dark, and his eyes were a startling shade of blue that seemed out of place in his sun-browned face. "Miss Owens," Diego said, rising, "you are awake. This is Nathan Vance. He is a friend. I have told him what happened." Nathan Vance stood as well, removing his hat. "Madam," he said, his voice low and soft, "I am sorry for what happened to you." "Thank you," Penelope said, taking the seat Diego offered her. She accepted a cup of coffee from Maria and studied the newcomer over its rim. "Nathan is what you might call an independent lawman," Diego explained. "When the sheriff will not act, sometimes we must take matters into our own hands." "You are going after the bandits," Penelope said. "It was not a question." "Someone has to," Nathan said. "They killed 2 men today. How many more before someone stops them?" "But there must have been 5 or 6 of them," Penelope protested. "You cannot go after them alone." "I have done more with less," Nathan said, and something in his voice suggested this was not an idle boast. Diego nodded. "Nathan has a reputation. The bandits, they will not expect him." Penelope set down her coffee cup. "I want to help." All 3 of them looked at her. "You are injured," Maria said gently, "and this is not work for a woman." "With respect, Senora Gonzalez, I have been taking care of myself for a long time now," Penelope said. "And I have information. I saw the men. I heard their voices. I could identify them if I saw them again." "That is helpful," Nathan said, "but Diego is right. You are injured and you have no experience with this kind of thing." "I have experience surviving," Penelope said, and there was steel in her voice now. "I have experience with people underestimating me and dismissing me. I have experience with doing what needs to be done, even when it is hard." Nathan studied her for a long moment, and Penelope met his gaze steadily. There was something in his eyes, a kind of loneliness that she recognized because she had seen it often enough in her own mirror. "Can you ride?" he asked finally. "Yes. Can you shoot?" "I have fired a pistol before." "That is not the same as shooting a man who is shooting back at you." "I understand that." Nathan looked at Diego, who shrugged. "She is stubborn, this one, like my mother." "I am sitting right here," Maria said, but there was amusement in her voice. "You can come as far as Yuba City," Nathan said to Penelope. "You can talk to the sheriff, tell him what you saw, but that is all. This is not some adventure from a dime novel. These men will kill you without hesitation if they get the chance." "I understand," Penelope said again. They left at first light, Penelope riding one of Diego's horses. Her side still ached, but she gritted her teeth and ignored it. Nathan set a steady pace, not fast but unrelenting, and she focused on keeping up with him. For the first hour they rode in silence. The California landscape rolled past them, golden hills dotted with oak trees, the morning air still holding a hint of coolness before the day's heat set in. Finally, Nathan spoke. "You said you were heading to Yuba City. You have family there." "No, I have a position, or I did." Penelope touched the carpetbag tied to her saddle. "I was supposed to start work as a governess for a family there, but that was before I lost everything in the attack. I do not know if they will still want me now." "Why would they not?" "Because I am arriving with nothing. No proper clothes, no luggage, Nothing but the dress on my back and a bag of papers that may or may not still be readable. If they are the kind of people who judge you by your luggage rather than your character, you do not want to work for them anyway." Penelope looked at him in surprise. "That is easy to say when you are not the one who needs the position." "Fair enough," Nathan conceded. "What made you want to be a governess?" It was an innocent question, but it struck at the heart of the lies Penelope had been telling. She could continue the deception, spin out the story she had crafted of a respectable young woman from a good family fallen on hard times. But something about the morning light and the vast openness of the landscape made her want to tell the truth for once. "I do not want to be a governess," she admitted, "but it is work I can do, and it is respectable, or respectable enough. What would you do if you had the choice?" "I do not know. Something different, something that is mine." Nathan nodded as though this made perfect sense. "I understand that." "Do you?" "I do. I spent 5 years taking orders, doing what other people told me to do during the war and then after. Finally decided I had had enough. Now I work for myself. Is it better? Sometimes. Sometimes I wonder if I made a mistake, but at least I am free." The word hung in the air between them. Free. It was what Penelope had been chasing for 3 years now, ever since she had left Philadelphia and the ruins of her old life behind. But freedom, she had learned, was more complicated than she had thought. It was not enough just to leave. You had to have somewhere to go, something to be. They stopped to rest the horses around midday. Nathan shared his provisions, hardtack and jerky that was tough as leather but edible. They sat in the shade of an oak tree, and Penelope found herself watching him. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of long practice, every action deliberate and efficient. But there was a tension in him too, a sense of coiled readiness, as though he was always prepared for trouble. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Why do you do this? Chase bandits, I mean. Diego said you are independent, so no one is paying you. Someone has to." "That is not an answer." Nathan was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "I lost someone once," he said finally. "My brother. He was killed by men not so different from the ones who attacked your coach, men who thought they could take what they wanted because no one would stop them. The law did nothing, so I learned to stop them myself." "I am sorry," Penelope said softly. "It was a long time ago. That does not make it hurt less." Nathan looked at her, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared pain. "No," he agreed, "it does not." They reached Yuba City in the late afternoon. It was a growing town, still rough around the edges but showing signs of prosperity. The gold rush days were over, but agriculture was bringing new wealth to the region. Penelope could see new buildings going up alongside the older, more ramshackle structures that lined the main street. Nathan led her to the sheriff's office, a squat wooden building with bars on the windows. Inside, a man sat behind a desk, his boots up on the surface, a newspaper in his hands. He looked up as they entered, his eyes taking in Nathan first, then sliding to Penelope with unconcealed interest. "Nathan Vance," he said, his tone making it clear this was not necessarily a welcome visit. "What brings you to my office?" "Doing your job, Sheriff Carlson," Nathan said flatly. "There was an attack on the Sacramento stage yesterday. 2 men killed and the bandits got away clean." Carlson swung his feet down from the desk with a thud. "That is outside my jurisdiction. You know that. It happened on the road to your town. The driver was headed here. That makes it your business." "I do not have the men to go chasing bandits all over the county," Carlson said. "You want something done. Write to the territorial marshal." "The territorial marshal is in San Francisco," Nathan said. "By the time he gets here, the trail will be cold and the bandits will be long gone." "Not my problem." Penelope stepped forward. Sheriff, I was on that stage. I saw the men who attacked us. If you do not go after them, they will attack someone else. Carlson finally gave her his full attention. And who are you, Penelope Owens? I am here to take up a position with the Harrison family. Something changed in Carlson's expression at the mention of the name. The Harrisons. Well, in that case, Miss Owens, I am sorry for your trouble, but as I told Vance here, I do not have the men to spare. These things happen on the road. It is unfortunate, but that is the way of things. These things happen because men like you let them happen, Nathan said, his voice hard. Watch your tone, Vance. I could throw you in a cell for that. You could try. The two men stared at each other, and Penelope could feel the tension crackling in the air. She stepped between them, addressing the sheriff. Can you at least tell me where I might find the Harrison house? Carlson gave her directions, his manner thawing slightly. When they were back outside, Nathan exhaled slowly. I apologize, he said. I should not have lost my temper. He is infuriating, Penelope said. He does not care at all, does he? No, men like Carlson, they care about keeping their position, not about doing their job. But I meant what I said. I will find the men who did this. How? I have my ways, but first, let me take you to the Harrison house. You have had a long enough journey. The Harrison house was on the edge of town, a large two-story structure that spoke of wealth and status. Penelope felt her heart sink as she looked down at her torn and dusty dress. She must look like a vagrant, not like someone qualified to educate children. You will be fine, Nathan said, as though reading her thoughts. Just tell them the truth. The truth, Penelope repeated softly. It seemed Nathan Vance had a great faith in the power of truth. She wished she could share it. She dismounted, wincing at the stiffness in her side, and approached the front door. Before she could knock, it opened, and a woman stood there, middle-aged and handsome, with sharp eyes that took in every detail of Penelope's appearance. Can I help you? She asked, her tone polite but wary. Mrs. Harrison, my name is Penelope Owens. I believe you are expecting me. I am the new governess. Mrs. Harrison's eyes widened. Miss Owens, but we received word that the stage had been attacked. We feared the worst. The stage was attacked and I was injured, but I survived. I apologize for my appearance. The bandits took everything. Good heavens, you poor dear. Come in, come in. We must get you cleaned up and rested. Mrs. Harrison ushered her inside, then noticed Nathan standing by the horses. And who is this? Nathan Vance, madam, Nathan said, touching the brim of his hat. I helped Miss Owens get to town safely. Then you have our gratitude, Mr. Vance. Please come in. The least we can do is offer you a meal. That is kind of you, madam, but I should be going. Nonsense, I insist. Nathan looked at Penelope, who gave a small nod. All right then, he said. Thank you. Mrs. Harrison brought them into a parlor that was furnished with an eye toward comfort rather than ostentation. She called for her husband, a round-faced man with kind eyes, and for her children, two girls aged perhaps 8 and 10. The girls stared at Penelope with open curiosity. This is Margaret and Susan, Mrs. Harrison said. Girls, this is Miss Owens, your new governess. What happened to you? The younger girl, Susan, asked with the bluntness of childhood. You look like you were in a fight. Susan, her mother admonished, but Penelope smiled. In a way I was, she said. The stagecoach I was traveling in was attacked by bandits. We crashed, and I was very fortunate to escape with my life. Both girls' eyes went wide. Did you see the bandits? Margaret asked. I did. Were they scary? Very scary, but I was lucky. Mr. Vance helped me get here safely. The girls turned their attention to Nathan, who looked decidedly uncomfortable with their scrutiny. Are you a lawman? Margaret asked. Not exactly, Nathan said. He is a hero, Susan declared. He rescued Miss Owens from the bandits. "I would not say that," Nathan protested, but the girls had already made up their minds. Mrs. Harrison shooed them away and turned to Penelope. "You must be exhausted, my dear. Let me show you to your room, and we will have hot water brought up for a bath. Then you can join us for supper." "Thank you," Penelope said, meaning it. "You are very kind." "Nonsense. You have been through a terrible ordeal. It is the least we can do." The room Mrs. Harrison showed her to was small but comfortable, with a real bed and clean linens that looked like heaven after the past 2 days. A maid brought up hot water, and Penelope gratefully peeled off her ruined dress and sank into the bath. The hot water stung the various cuts and bruises she had acquired, but it also eased the deep ache in her muscles. As she washed, she thought about what Nathan had said. Just tell them the truth. But which truth? The truth that she was Penelope Owens, daughter of a Philadelphia merchant who had lost everything in bad investments before drinking himself to death. The truth that she had spent the past 3 years drifting from one position to another, always moving before anyone could look too closely at her references or ask too many questions about her past. Or the truth that she was tired of running, tired of lying, tired of being alone. That last thought surprised her. She had gotten used to solitude, had told herself she preferred it. But sitting at that table with the Gonzalez family, riding beside Nathan Vance, watching the easy affection between Mrs. Harrison and her daughters, something in her had ached with longing for that kind of connection. When she emerged from her room, dressed in a borrowed gown that Mrs. Harrison had provided, she found Nathan still there, sitting awkwardly on a parlor chair while Mr. Harrison peppered him with questions about the attack. He looked relieved when she appeared. "Miss Owens," Mr. Harrison said, rising. "I was just telling Mr. Vance here that I am appalled by what happened. Something must be done about these bandits." "I agree," Penelope said, "but the sheriff seems unwilling to act." "Carlson is a fool," Mr. Harrison said bluntly. "But he has friends in the right places, and so he keeps his position. However, that does not mean the citizens of this town are powerless. Mr. Vance, if you are planning to pursue these men, I would like to offer whatever assistance I can provide." "That is generous of you," Nathan said carefully, "but this is dangerous work." "I am not offering to ride with you," Mr. Harrison said with a smile. "I know my limitations, but I can offer supplies, information, and money for whatever you need." Nathan nodded slowly. "That would be helpful." "Thank you." Over dinner, the conversation turned to lighter topics. The Harrisons were easy company, clearly prosperous but without pretension. They asked Penelope about her background, and she gave them the story she had prepared, the one about growing up in Philadelphia, receiving an education, finding herself alone in the world after her father's death. It was mostly true, just with the uglier parts smoothed over. But she found the lies tasted bitter in her mouth, especially with Nathan sitting across the table. He said little, but she could feel his gaze on her from time to time, thoughtful and assessing. Did he know she was not being entirely truthful? Did he care? After dinner, Mrs. Harrison insisted that Nathan stay the night in their guest room rather than ride out in the darkness. He protested, but she was adamant, and eventually he gave in with good grace. Penelope found herself relieved. She was not ready for him to leave yet, though she could not have said exactly why. She was sitting in the parlor, looking through a book of poetry that she had found on a shelf when Nathan appeared in the doorway. "I did not mean to disturb you," he said. "You are not disturbing me. I could not sleep. Too much has happened." He came in and took a seat, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a while they sat in comfortable silence. Then Nathan spoke. "You are not telling them everything." It was not a question. Penelope felt her stomach tighten. "What do you mean about your past?" "There are pieces you are leaving out." That is none of your concern. You are right, it is not. Nathan was quiet for a moment. But for what it is worth, I think you should tell them the truth, whatever it is. And why would I do that? Because lies have a way of catching up with you. And because they seem like good people who would understand. Penelope closed the book with more force than necessary. You do not know anything about me or my life. You have no right to judge the choices I have made. You are right again, Nathan said calmly. I apologize. His easy agreement deflated her anger. She sighed. No, I am sorry. I should not have snapped at you. You have been nothing but kind to me. You have been through a lot. That is no excuse for rudeness. Penelope looked at him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why does it matter to you? Whether I tell them the truth or not. Nathan considered this. I have spent a lot of my life lying, he said finally. To myself, mostly. Telling myself I was fine, that I did not need anyone, that the anger I carried was justice and not just revenge. It took me a long time to realize that those lies were eating me alive, and I guess I do not like seeing someone else go down that same road. You think I am lying to myself. I think you are running from something, and maybe you have good reason to, but running gets tiring after a while. Penelope felt something crack inside her chest, a fissure in the careful walls she had built around herself. What if the truth is ugly? She asked softly. What if it is not something people want to hear? Then they will deal with it or they will not. But at least you will know where you stand. She wanted to argue with him, to tell him he was wrong, that he did not understand. But the exhaustion of 3 years of lying, of always watching what she said, of always being ready to move on, suddenly felt crushing. My father did not just die, she heard herself say. He killed himself. After he lost everything, after he had drunk away what little we had left, he put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. And before that, he had tried to sell me. Not in so many words, but that is what it was. He found a man, 50 years old and fat as a pig, who was willing to pay off his debts in exchange for my hand in marriage. And I said no. I ran. And sometimes I wonder if that is why he did it, if I killed him by refusing. The words hung in the air. Nathan did not speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice was gentle. You did not kill him. He made his own choices. Did I, though? If I had just agreed, just done what he wanted, he would still be alive. And you would be trapped in a marriage to a man you did not choose, living a life you did not want. That is not living, Penelope. That is just another kind of death. The sound of her name on his lips sent an unexpected warmth through her. You said you understand what it is like to run. What are you running from? Ghosts, mostly. The man I used to be, the things I did during the war. Nathan's face was shadowed in the lamplight. I was young when I enlisted. 18, full of fire and conviction. I thought I was fighting for something righteous. And maybe I was at the start. But war has a way of grinding that out of you. By the end, I was just trying to survive. And some of the things I did to survive, some of the orders I followed, they haunt me. Is that why you do this? Chase bandits, try to help people? I tell myself it is about justice, about stopping bad men from hurting people, but maybe it is just penance. Maybe I am trying to balance the scales. Can they be balanced? I do not know, but I have to try. Penelope felt a strange kinship with this lonely cowboy, this man who carried his own burden of guilt and grief. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. He looked down at the contact, then up at her face, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. You are not alone, she said softly. In case you thought you were. Neither are you, he replied. They sat like that for a moment that stretched and held, full of possibility. Then Nathan gently withdrew his hand and stood. I should let you rest, he said. Tomorrow I will start looking for the men who attacked the stage. If you remember anything else, anything at all that might help, let me know. I will. He paused at the door. Penelope, Thank you for telling me the truth." After he left, Penelope sat in the quiet parlor for a long time, feeling the place where he had touched her hand, marveling at how such a simple contact could feel so significant. The next morning, Nathan was gone before she woke. Mrs. Harrison told her at breakfast that he had left at dawn, but that he had said he would return when he had news. Penelope felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "He is quite striking, is not he?" Mrs. Harrison said with a knowing smile. In a rough sort of way. Penelope felt her cheeks heat. "I had not noticed." "Of course not, dear." Mrs. Harrison's smile widened. "Now let us discuss your duties. The girls need lessons in reading, writing, arithmetic, and deportment. I also hope you might teach them a bit of music if you play." "I play piano, though I am not expert." "That will do nicely. We have an instrument in the music room." The days fell into a routine. Penelope spent her mornings with the girls, teaching them their letters and numbers, reading to them from books of history and science. They were bright children, curious and eager to learn, and she found herself genuinely enjoying their company. In the afternoons, she would take them for walks, pointing out the plants and animals they encountered, turning every outing into a lesson. But her thoughts kept returning to Nathan. Where was he? Had he found the bandits? Was he safe? A week passed, then 10 days. Penelope told herself she was being foolish, that she barely knew the man, that there was no reason she should be thinking about him so much. But she could not seem to help it. Something about him had gotten under her skin, had touched something in her that she thought she had locked away. On the 11th day, he returned. Penelope was in the garden with the girls when she heard his horse. She looked up to see him dismounting in front of the house, looking dusty and tired but whole. Relief flooded through her so intensely it left her shaky. "Mr. Vance," Susan shouted, dropping her sketchbook and running toward him. Margaret followed, and Nathan smiled at their enthusiasm. "Ladies," he said, touching his hat, "are you behaving for Miss Owens?" "Yes," they chorused. "I am glad to hear it." Penelope approached more slowly, trying to keep her emotions in check. "Mr. Vance, it is good to see you, Miss Owens." His eyes met hers, and she saw warmth there and something else, something that made her pulse quicken. "I wonder if I might speak with you and the Harrisons. I have news." They gathered in the parlor, the girls reluctantly sent off to their rooms. Nathan accepted coffee and sat, his hat in his hands. "I found them," he said without preamble. "The bandits. They are holed up in an old mining camp about 20 miles north of here. 5 of them, just like Miss Owens said." "What will you do?" Mr. Harrison asked. "I am going to bring them in. But I wanted you to know first, and I wanted to ask Miss Owens if she would be willing to identify them once I have them." "Of course," Penelope said immediately. "Whatever you need. It could be dangerous if they have friends, if someone tries to break them out." "I understand." Nathan nodded. "I will leave in the morning. With luck, I will be back in 3 days. You are going alone?" Mrs. Harrison asked, concern in her voice. "I work better alone." "That is foolish," Penelope said sharply. "They will kill you. I have done this before. That does not make it less foolish." Nathan looked at her, something flickering in his expression. "I will be careful. See that you are." That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Penelope found Nathan sitting on the porch, looking out at the darkening sky. She brought 2 cups of coffee and sat beside him, offering one. "Thank you," he said. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Penelope spoke. "I do not want you to go. I have to, I know, but that does not mean I have to like it." Nathan turned to look at her. "Why does it matter to you whether I go or stay?" "Because," Penelope said, and found she could not finish the sentence. Because in the short time she had known him, he had become important to her. Because when she thought of him riding into danger, her chest tightened with fear. Because she was tired of being alone and he made her feel less so. Because, Nathan prompted gently. Because you matter, she said finally. To me. I know that probably seems foolish, given we barely know each other, but it is the truth. Nathan set down his coffee cup and reached out, taking her hand in his. His palm was rough and warm, and Penelope felt that touch all the way through her body. It does not seem foolish, he said. You matter to me too. Then do not get yourself killed. I will do my best. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and courtly that it made her heart ache. Then he released her and stood. I should get some sleep. I have a long ride ahead of me. Nathan, she said, and he turned back. Come back to me. I will, he promised. The 3 days Nathan was gone were the longest of Penelope's life. She went through her duties mechanically, teaching the girls, taking her meals with the family, but her mind was always elsewhere. At night, she lay awake, imagining all the things that could go wrong. Mrs. Harrison noticed, of course. On the second day, she drew Penelope aside. You care for him, she said. It was not a question. Penelope thought about denying it, but the truth slipped out before she could stop it. I do. Does he know? I think so, yes. Mrs. Harrison smiled. Good. He is a good man. Lonely, perhaps, carrying too much on his shoulders, but good. What if he does not come back? Then you will grieve and you will go on, but I think he will come back. He has something to come back to now. On the morning of the 4th day, Penelope was in the schoolroom with the girls when she heard the commotion outside. She rushed to the window and saw a wagon pulling up to the sheriff's office, Nathan riding alongside it. In the back of the wagon, she could see 4 men, their hands bound, looking sullen and defeated. Girls, continue with your reading, she said. And before they could respond, she was out the door and running down the street. By the time she reached the sheriff's office, a crowd had gathered. Nathan was helping pull the prisoners from the wagon, and Sheriff Carlson was there, looking distinctly unhappy about the entire situation. This is not proper procedure, Vance, he was saying. You cannot just bring prisoners in like this. I just did, Nathan said. These are the men who attacked the stage. Miss Owens can identify them. His eyes found her in the crowd, and despite everything, he smiled. Penelope pushed her way through until she was standing beside him. Is it them? Nathan asked. She looked at the 4 men. They were dirty and angry, glaring at everyone and everything. But she recognized them. The one with the scar on his cheek, the one with the tobacco-stained beard, the one who had kicked her, who had called her pretty. It is them, she said firmly. Those are the men who attacked the stagecoach. You heard her, Sheriff, Nathan said. Lock them up. Where is the 5th man? Carlson asked. Did not make it, Nathan said flatly. He resisted. Something in his tone suggested there was more to that story, but the sheriff did not press. Muttering under his breath, he herded the prisoners into his jail. When they were gone, Nathan turned to Penelope. I told you I would come back. You did. Penelope felt suddenly shy, aware of all the people watching them. Were you hurt? Nothing serious, a few bruises. You should have a doctor look at you. I am fine. He glanced around at the watching crowd. Could we talk somewhere less public? They walked to the edge of town, to a small grove of trees where the noise of the crowd faded away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Nathan reached out and cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. I thought about you, he said. The whole time I was gone, wondering if you meant what you said. I meant it, Penelope whispered. Every word. I am not an easy man to care for, Nathan said. I have nothing to offer you. No home, no fortune. Just myself, and I am not much. You are everything, Penelope said, and then she was rising up on her toes and he was bending down and their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was not a gentle kiss. There was too much pent-up emotion for that, too much fear and relief and longing. Nathan's arms came around her, pulling her close, and she clutched at his shirt, pouring everything she felt into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I do not deserve you," he said. "Too bad," Penelope said. "You have me anyway." He laughed, and the sound was full of joy and wonder. "What do we do now?" "I do not know," Penelope admitted, "but we will figure it out together." In the weeks that followed, they did figure it out, slowly and sometimes painfully. Nathan stayed in Yuba City, taking a room at the boarding house while he waited for the trial of the bandits. Penelope continued her work as a governess, but every free moment she had, she spent with Nathan. They talked endlessly about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood on a small farm in Missouri, about his brother who had been his best friend, about the war and the things he had seen. She told him about Philadelphia, about her father's slow decline, about the fear and shame that had driven her west. "I am tired of lying," she told him one afternoon as they walked along the river. "To the Harrisons, to everyone, I want to tell them the truth." "Then do it," Nathan said. "What if they dismiss me? Then you will find something else. You are strong, Penelope, stronger than you think." That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Penelope asked to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. They gathered in the parlor, and she told them everything. About her father's debts, about the man he had tried to sell her to, about the suicide and her flight west. About the lies on her references, the position she had held briefly before moving on out of fear of being discovered. When she finished, the silence in the room was heavy. Then Mrs. Harrison came over and took Penelope's hands in hers. "Thank you for trusting us with the truth," she said. "It must have been very difficult to share." "I understand if you want me to leave," Penelope said. "Leave? Why would we want that? Because I lied to you." "Because my references were false." "You have been nothing but wonderful with our daughters," Mr. Harrison said. "They adore you. Your past does not change that. But the lies—" "You were surviving," Mrs. Harrison said gently. "We all do what we must to survive. What matters is who you are now, and the woman you are now is someone we are proud to have in our home." Penelope felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Thank you." "However," Mr. Harrison said, and Penelope's heart sank. "However, I think we need to discuss your future. Because it seems to me that you and Mr. Vance have grown quite close." "We have," Penelope admitted, and I care for him deeply." Mrs. Harrison smiled. "Does he care for you?" "He says he does." "Then perhaps," Mr. Harrison said, "you should think about what you want that future to look like, because you are welcome to stay here as long as you wish. But if you are going to marry Mr. Vance, and I suspect you are, then you will need to make plans." "I have not thought that far ahead," Penelope said, though it was not entirely true. She had thought about it, late at night when she could not sleep. Thought about what it would be like to have a life with Nathan, a real life, not just stolen moments. "Think about it," Mrs. Harrison advised. "And know that whatever you decide, you have our support." The trial of the bandits was held 2 weeks later. Penelope testified, describing what she had seen and heard, identifying the men despite their lawyers' attempts to rattle her. Nathan testified as well, laying out the evidence he had gathered, the stolen goods he had recovered from their camp. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning a guilty verdict. The 4 men were sentenced to hang. Penelope did not attend the hanging. She had seen enough death. Instead, she spent the day with the girls, teaching them about birds, trying to focus on life and growth rather than endings. But that evening, when Nathan came to the house, she could see the weight on him. They walked in silence to their usual spot by the river, and she waited for him to speak. "I thought I would feel better," he said finally, "seeing justice done, but I just feel tired." "Then maybe it is time to stop," Penelope said. "Stop chasing bandits, seeking justice. Maybe it is time to let someone else carry that burden for a while. I do not know how to do anything else." "Yes, you do. You know how to be kind, how to be brave, how to care for people." Penelope took his hand. "You could learn to be happy if you wanted to, with you, if you will have me." Nathan turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Penelope Owens, I have nothing to offer you but a saddle-worn horse and a few dollars saved up. But if you will have me, I promise to spend every day for the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." "You are already worthy," Penelope said. "And yes, yes, I will have you." The kiss they shared then was different from the first. Softer, sweeter, full of promise. When they broke apart, Nathan was smiling, really smiling, and Penelope thought she had never seen anything so beautiful. "So what do we do now?" he asked. "Now we figure out how to build a life together." It was not as hard as Penelope had feared. Nathan had saved his money carefully over the years, and with what Penelope had managed to put aside from her wages, they had enough for a down payment on a small piece of land just outside of Yuba City. It was not much, just 20 acres and a cabin that needed work, but it was theirs. They married in the fall, in a simple ceremony at the church with the Harrisons and Diego Gonzalez and his mother in attendance. Penelope wore a dress that Mrs. Harrison had helped her make, pale blue with white lace, and carried wildflowers that the girls had picked. Nathan wore a new suit that looked uncomfortable on him, but that made him devastatingly handsome. "I do," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I do," Penelope echoed and meant it with her whole heart. Their first year of marriage was not easy. There was a drought that summer, and their first crop struggled. Nathan took work where he could find it, hiring himself out to larger ranches, while Penelope kept the house and tended a small vegetable garden. They were poor, but they were happy in a way that neither of them had ever been before. At night, they would lie in bed in their small cabin, talking about their days, making plans for the future. Nathan wanted to expand the ranch, buy more land, maybe run cattle. Penelope wanted to start a school, teach children whose families could not afford to send them away for an education. "We will do it all," Nathan promised, pulling her close. "Everything you want." "I already have everything I want," Penelope said, and it was true. She had a home, she had a partner, she had love. What more could anyone ask for? In their second year, the rains came back and their crops flourished. Nathan bought 6 head of cattle, the beginning of a herd. Penelope started teaching 3 children from a neighboring farm, meeting with them twice a week in the cabin. And in the spring, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan one evening after supper, unable to keep the news to herself any longer. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Penelope asked, though his reaction made it clear. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Nathan said, setting her down carefully as though she had suddenly become fragile. "You have given me everything, Penelope. Everything I never thought I could have." Their son was born in January of 1879, a cold morning when the ground was hard with frost. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Penelope was afraid, but Mrs. Harrison was there, and a midwife from town, and Nathan, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. When it was over, when the baby's cries filled the cabin, Nathan held his son with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. They named him Henry, after Nathan's brother. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, with Nathan's blue eyes and Penelope's dark hair. Watching Nathan with him, seeing the gentleness and love in his every touch, Penelope felt her heart might burst. The years passed, marked by growth and change. Nathan and Penelope added to their land, slowly building up a respectable ranch. Henry grew into a curious, bright boy who loved helping his father with the cattle and sitting on his mother's lap while she taught her students. When Henry was 4, Penelope became pregnant again. This time it was a girl, born in the spring with Nathan's dark hair and Penelope's smile. They named her Clara, and she was as different from her brother as could be, fierce and independent from the start. The Harrisons remained close friends. Margaret and Susan, now grown women themselves, would visit, doting on Henry and Clara. Diego Gonzalez and his mother came for holidays, and Maria would tell stories in Spanish that had the children shrieking with laughter. On their 10th anniversary, Nathan took Penelope up to the ridge that overlooked their land. It had become something of a tradition, a quiet moment stolen away from the bustle of family life. "You ever regret it?" he asked as they sat watching the sunset. "Giving up your teaching to raise children, living out here instead of in town?" "Never," Penelope said firmly. "Do you?" "Giving up the wandering life, not for a single moment." Nathan pulled her close. "You gave me a home, Penelope, not just a house but a real home, a place to belong." "You gave me the same," Penelope said. "I spent so many years running, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. I was so afraid that if people knew the truth about me, they would not want me. But you saw all of me, every ugly truth, and you loved me anyway." "There is nothing ugly about you," Nathan said. "You survived. You did what you had to do. And then you were brave enough to stop running and take a chance on building something real." "We built it together," Penelope corrected. "Yes," Nathan agreed. "Together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Below them they could see their home, smoke rising from the chimney, lights beginning to glow in the windows. They could hear faintly the sound of children laughing. "I want to tell you something," Penelope said. "Something I should have said a long time ago." "What is it?" "Thank you for seeing me, for giving me a chance, for offering me your heart when I had nothing to give in return but honesty." Nathan turned to look at her, his expression soft. "Your honesty was the greatest gift you could have given me. It let me be honest too. It let me stop pretending I did not need anyone, that I was fine on my own. You saved me, Penelope, as surely as I like to think I saved you." "We saved each other," Penelope said. "Yes," Nathan agreed. "We did." As the stars began to appear overhead, they made their way back down the hill toward home. Toward the life they had built, the family they had created, the love they had nurtured. It had not always been easy. There had been hard times, lean years, moments of fear and doubt. But they had faced it all together, and that had made all the difference. Henry came running out to meet them as they approached the house, Clara toddling along behind him. Nathan scooped Clara up while Penelope took Henry's hand, and together, as a family, they went inside. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Nathan and Penelope lay in bed, talking quietly about their plans for the coming year. The herd was growing, and they were thinking about building a larger barn. Penelope's school had expanded to 8 students, and she was considering hiring someone to help her. "We have come a long way," Nathan said. "From that first day when you walked into Yuba City looking like you had been through a war." "I felt like I had been," Penelope said. "But then I found you, my lonely cowboy carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders." "Not so lonely anymore," Nathan said, pulling her closer. "No," Penelope agreed, resting her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Not lonely at all." In the years that followed, the ranch continued to prosper. Nathan proved to be as skilled at ranching as he had been at tracking bandits, and Penelope's school became something of an institution in the area. They added a schoolhouse to the property, a small building where she could teach properly, and the number of her students grew to nearly 20. Henry grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Clara was wild and adventurous, more likely to be found climbing trees or racing horses than sitting still for lessons. When Henry was 16 and Clara was 12, Penelope discovered she was pregnant once more, much to her surprise. "At my age," she said to Nathan, torn between delight and concern, "I thought we were done." "Apparently not," Nathan said, grinning. "One more blessing. This baby was another girl born easily in the spring. They named her Rose, and she was a joy from the first moment, sweet-tempered and happy." Henry and Clara doted on her, and Penelope often found herself watching the three of them together, marveling at how full her life had become. The town of Yuba City grew around them, becoming more settled and prosperous. The wildness of the old days faded, replaced by civilization and order. Sheriff Carlson had long since been replaced by a younger man who actually did his job. The railroad came through, bringing new opportunities and new people. But for all the changes in the world around them, Nathan and Penelope's love remained constant. They still took their walks to the ridge on their anniversary, still stole quiet moments together when they could. The passion of their early days had mellowed into something deeper and more enduring, a love that was woven into the fabric of their daily lives. When Henry turned 21, he fell in love with a girl from town, the daughter of the blacksmith. Her name was Emma, and she was practical and kind, with a laugh that reminded Nathan of Penelope's. They married in the summer, and Nathan built them a small house on the edge of the ranch property. "It is strange," Nathan said to Penelope as they watched Henry and Emma dance at their wedding, "seeing him grown and starting his own life." "It is what we raised him for," Penelope said, "to be independent, to find his own happiness." "I know. But I miss the little boy who used to follow me everywhere, asking 1,000 questions." "He is not so far away," Penelope pointed out, "just across the field." "I suppose that is true." Clara showed no signs of settling down. She was 20 by then, and had refused 3 proposals, declaring that she had no interest in being tied down to domestic life. Instead, she worked on the ranch alongside her father and brother, as skilled with horses and cattle as any man. "She worries me," Penelope admitted to Nathan one night. "Why?" "Because she is so determined to be independent, to not need anyone. It reminds me of myself before I met you." "She will find her way," Nathan said, "just like you did," and he was right. When Clara was 22, a new family moved to the area, with a son named Thomas, who was as wild and independent as she was. They were constantly competing, constantly challenging each other, until one day the competition turned into something else entirely. Their courtship was a whirlwind, all fire and passion, and they married within 6 months of meeting. "Well," Penelope said at their wedding, "at least life will never be boring for them." "Just like it has never been boring for us," Nathan said, and Penelope laughed. The years continued to pass, marked by joys and sorrows. Mrs. Harrison passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was 70, and Penelope wept at her funeral, remembering the kindness the older woman had shown her when she had nothing and no one. Mr. Harrison followed his wife 3 years later, and their daughters, now with families of their own, inherited the house. Diego Gonzalez married a woman from Mexico, and they had 4 children who grew up playing with Henry and Clara. Maria Gonzalez lived to the remarkable age of 92, sharp and funny to the end, and when she died, it felt like the loss of a piece of history. But for every loss, there were new beginnings. Henry and Emma had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Clara and Thomas had twin boys who were as rambunctious and wild as their parents. Rose, when she was 19, married a schoolteacher from Sacramento and moved to the city, though she visited often. Nathan's hair turned gray, and then white. Lines deepened around his eyes and mouth, maps of a life well lived. Penelope's hair silvered too, and her hands grew gnarled with age, but her eyes remained bright and sharp. They celebrated their 40th anniversary on the ridge, as they always did. It was harder to make the climb now, their joints stiff and protesting, but they made it, settling on the same spot where they had sat so many times before. 40 years, Nathan said wonderingly. How did that happen? One day at a time, Penelope said. The same way everything happens. Do you remember that first day, when I brought you to the Harrison house? I remember thinking you were the most serious man I had ever met, and wondering why someone like you would bother helping someone like me. I saw something in you, Nathan said, a strength you did not even know you had. And I was drawn to it, to you. You saw the real me, Penelope said. Even when I was lying to everyone else, you saw through it, and you did not judge me for it. How could I? I was doing the same thing, lying to myself about being fine alone. Nathan took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. You gave me permission to want more, to hope for more. We gave each other that, Penelope said. They sat in silence as the sun set, just as they had 40 years ago. Below them, the ranch sprawled, much larger now than it had been in the early days. There were multiple houses, multiple families. The school Penelope had started was still running, now under the direction of one of her former students. The cattle herd numbered in the hundreds. We built something good, Nathan said. We did, Penelope agreed. I love you, Nathan said. I have loved you since the day you looked at me with those eyes full of fire and told me you wanted to help catch the bandits. I will love you until the day I die and beyond. I love you too, Penelope said, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. My lonely cowboy who offered me his heart when I had nothing to give but honesty. Your honesty was everything, Nathan said. It was the foundation we built our whole life on. As the stars began to appear, they made their way slowly back down the hill. Their steps were slower now, more careful, but they still moved together, still helped each other over the rough spots, just as they always had. That night, lying in bed in the house they had shared for 4 decades, Penelope thought about the girl she had been when she first came to Yuba City. Frightened, alone, carrying a carpet bag full of lies. She thought about how close she had come to never knowing this life, this love, this home. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? Nathan asked, his voice drowsy. For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me a home. You gave me the same, Nathan said. We found home in each other. And that, Penelope thought as she drifted off to sleep, her hand in Nathan's, was the truest thing of all. They had found home, not in a place, but in each other. And what a home it had been. Nathan passed away in his sleep on a cold winter morning 3 years later. He was 78 years old, and he went peacefully, with Penelope holding his hand. The whole community turned out for his funeral, testament to the man he had been, the life he had lived. Penelope grieved deeply, but she did not break. She had their children and grandchildren around her, all the love they had created together. And she had the memories, so many memories, of a life shared fully and completely. She lived another 5 years, remaining sharp and active until the very end. She still taught occasionally, still walked up to the ridge when the weather was good. And on the anniversary of Nathan's death, she would sit there and talk to him, telling him about the grandchildren, about the ranch, about everything he was missing. I will see you soon, she told him on what would be her last visit to the ridge, and we can walk together again. Penelope Owens Vance passed away peacefully in her sleep on a spring morning, surrounded by her children. She was 80 years old, and she died as she had lived the last 50 years of her life, loved and at peace. They buried her next to Nathan on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the shade of an oak tree. The whole family gathered, 3 generations of Vances, all of them testament to the love story that had started with a stagecoach robbery and a lonely cowboy who had offered his heart to a woman brave enough to offer honesty. Henry, now in his 70s himself, stood at his parents' graves with his own grandchildren around him. They had something special, he told them, something rare and precious. They found each other when they both needed it most, and they built a life on trust and honesty and love. That is the legacy they left us. Not just this ranch or this land, but the example of what love can be when it is real and true. Years later, the grandchildren would tell the story to their own children. About Penelope, who had come west with nothing but lies, and Nathan, the lonely cowboy who had been running from his past. About how honesty had brought them together, and love had kept them together. About how they had found home not in a place but in each other. The ranch remained in the family for generations, and the school Penelope had started still operated, now a proper building in town, teaching hundreds of children every year. And on the hill under the oak tree, 2 graves stood side by side, marking the resting place of a woman who had offered honesty and a lonely cowboy who had offered his heart, and who had both, finally, found home. The story of Nathan and Penelope became something of a legend in Yuba City, told and retold until it took on the quality of myth. But those who had known them, who had seen them walking together hand in hand, even in their old age, who had witnessed the quiet joy they took in each other's company, knew that the truth was even better than the legend. They had been 2 damaged people who had found each other against all odds. They had chosen to be honest, to be vulnerable, to take the risk of love. And in doing so, they had created something that outlasted them both, a legacy of love and family and home that continued to ripple outward, touching lives for generations to come. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the cattle or the land or the money, but the love. The choice to see and be seen, to know and be known, to love and be loved. Penelope had offered Nathan honesty, showing him all her flaws and fears. Nathan had offered Penelope his heart, giving her a safe place to finally stop running. And together, they had found what they had both been searching for all along: home.